listeners, to the Hero Whispers podcast. Today, with your host, Jeannie Marie, I am the Chief Supergirl of Supergirls.com. That's 2L, second L for love. So glad you're here with us today. We have a killer guest, and I'm going to introduce her in a moment. But maybe some of you are just tuning in for the first time, so I got to give you a little insight into what Supergirls is all about. We're in the business of inspiration. What we do is empower and inspire college women to launch from college to life with so many different ways. Our podcast, we love to speak to our girls and hear about their journeys and how we can make it better for them, better than it was when we launched. And also, we bring in amazing women from all walks of life that could potentially inspire them or be mentors or network contacts or whatever. It's all about them. So that's what we do. And I'm so glad you're here. Thanks again for joining. And without further ado, let's introduce our amazing guest today, Miss Sarah McReynolds. She is a current undergraduate at New York University studying Metropolitan Studies. As a first-generation college student who had never been to New York before college, Sarah values confidence as one of the best qualities for success. Across several student leadership roles on and beyond campus, she focuses on leading through recognizing others. She has facilitated award-winning leadership development sessions and planned award-winning campus events, but takes the most pride in receiving the title Triple Superstar by the RA team she works with at NYU. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jeannie, thanks for having me.
She is an amazing young woman. I swear, she's like a lot older in what she knows and her wisdom than her actual years. It's incredible. When I speak to Sarah, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know this when I was her age. How did she know all this? How did she get so smart?
Jeannie, I love every conversation I have with you. I walk away feeling so great about myself.
But you should. You're phenomenal. Phenomenal. First of all, okay, let's just say, first of all, thank you for that compliment. I love that. And I the same. I feel the same. So that means we're just going to have to keep talking. So that's all that means. But I think it's so cool that you're first generation college. This is, to me, is like epic. And how did you get this goal in your sights? How did you get to it? Let's talk about that. And why New York?
I used to view coming to New York, I had never been to New York before college. And so I used to view it as this gamble. And I kind of had this idea in my mind of like a high stakes poker player just laying like $80,000 on the table and making like a very calculated risk. But the truth is, and I learned this from an alumni of the university who said it, and I like this so much better than viewing it as a gamble. College is really an investment that you're making in yourself and your future, and you're worth every penny you're putting down. And so I love kind of that image instead of you're making this investment in yourself. This is something that you are worth, and this is something that you really deserve in terms of an opportunity. So yeah, it was definitely a risk though. I knew that I really wanted to experience life in New York City. I knew that it was fast paced, had great coffee, which is a selling point. But also, I study buildings in cities, and there's really New York is one of the best places to study architecture and the way that a city functions and how it kind of has its own heartbeat as kind of an organism. So I really loved having that opportunity with NYU.
Oh my God, you say that about the coffee? Like every time I go to California. So listeners, Sarah is originally from California. She's a Southern California girl. That's why she's so full of sunshine. But
and every time I go Valley Girl accent.
I love it. People always think I'm from Southern California too, and I love it. But the coffee out there is brutal. Dunkin' Donuts is like my go-to. I'm an addict, and you can't find it in California. It's funny that you said that.
I know.
I know you probably didn't mean Dunkin' Donuts, but I just had to take that and just make that comment about the coffee out there. It's so different. But anyway.
No, it's an absolutely valid point.
Is like it's such a difference when I go out there and if I'm out there for a few days, I'm like I'm totally jonesing after, I can't get my Dunkin' Donuts. It's really bad. But I guess it could be worse things to be addicted to.
True.
For real. Okay, so talk about your study. What are you studying at NYU?
Yeah, so this is, again, part of the reason I chose NYU is that it has all of these really unique majors that don't really exist at other schools. So I study metropolitan studies, which is housed through social cultural analysis. So it's a lot of looking at the way that the structures that we create as societies impact how our society functions and how people live, and kind of vice versa. And so it's a combination of architecture and urban design and art history a little bit, but it also includes politics and economics, and understanding a little bit of psychology too, and how people make decisions. And so I think it's a really fascinating program just because you can understand from the beginning of when a policy is implemented to the result, 50 years later. And I think that's something we need, especially as people trend towards cities and as we, as a kind of a global collective, move towards having more people in urban centers. It's really important to consider what those cities will look like, 50 years from now, because you're not just putting in a park, you're putting in something that's going to be there maybe longer than you will. So it's a really fascinating program. My minor is also business of entertainment, media, and technology. So I get to take all kinds of fun classes, about video games, about Broadway, about all of the things that also define New York. So it's a really comprehensive program. I study a little bit of everything, and that's why I'm really grateful for the opportunity to do it.
I mean, your attitude of gratitude is phenomenal. The fact that you're studying something that you love and it's so interesting, I love that. I always, when people think they have to major in a certain thing and know what they want to do and they get out, and it's like, no, study what you love, because you're going to be spending so much time and energy on the subject matter, and if you're putting your heart into it, you're going to do better. So I love that you're just like, it sounds like you said, like, it's so much fun. Like, that's fun.
Yeah, I talk with my friends in other majors sometimes, and I'm writing final papers about why Red Dead Redemption 2 deserves to win a Grammy. And I just, that to me is so much more fascinating about than, a 500-person lecture. I love the opportunity to study what I love. And a lot of it people don't realize is really practical skills that are going to, in the next few years, shape how we see our society. So it's nice to get in on kind of get an understanding of what that'll look like.
Well, plus it also differentiates you in the market, for real. Like, how many people are studying that? Metropolitan studies. Oh, and so I wanted to ask you, when you said that about cities, because of what's going on with this pandemic, what are you guys talking about? Like, are you seeing in the trends, like, that people are going to move away from cities, or you still think that it's going to be the urban sprawl? Like, you still think people are going to be attracted to the cities? Do you think that's going to change anything?
Yeah, it's so funny you mentioned that. I actually just wrote a final paper on it. I guess for listeners,
no way.
Listening, for listeners listening in the future, we're currently in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, quarantines in effect. But it's really interesting because there has been a lot of discussion about whether or not people will move away from cities. And I think that's something we hear every time there's an issue in a major city, is we kind of have this idea that the city itself is the problem. And this concept of the city is what's wrong with why we have all of these issues. But the truth is there's a lot of underlying issues in what goes into policy in cities that actually impacts more of what we're seeing. And so I think that hopefully, we can look at addressing some of those policies. And I think that it's hard to say that people will forever disappear from the city, because it's just, especially in New York City, it's really hard to, once you've lived in New York, move somewhere else. As I can attest, not living in New York during quarantine. You get really used to having those services and having transportation all so close, that it becomes really challenging to move out. But also, a lot of the places that people are moving to during quarantine aren't able to accommodate such a large influx of people. So you're talking about rural towns that might not have enough hospital beds for the amount of people who would be staying there. So it would definitely be a large transition that we'd be looking at.
I agree. I have lived in 10 states, and I always find myself coming back to New York. Yeah, I always come back because it's like, or metropolitan greater New York. But now I moved from Hoboken to the Jersey Shore, and it's a culture shock. It's completely like, I'm like, what did I do? I mean, even though we're close to the beach, I agree. Like, you get used to it. You get spoiled. Everything is there. They have everything. So yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you. Even California, you think it's the same way, but it's not, because you have to drive everywhere, and it's a nightmare to drive, right?
Yeah, I mean, I love California. Love coming from California and having that experience. But it's definitely different, especially, as like a young person living in New York City. I love not having to drive everywhere. I love being able to take the subway and be in a completely different part of New York City. And that's something, especially now under lockdown, that I really think that I didn't value enough as an experience is, it's hard being in one place. I didn't plan on that.
I know. But you're adapting. You're adapting. Who would have thunk? I mean, really. You're adapting, you're thriving, you're writing papers, and you're recognizing others, which is your core value, which we talked about. And I think that is such a special quality and really hard to find and rare. It's like you're like a rare gem. So I want to know how this became such a force in your life.
Yeah, well, it's funny you mentioned gems. I'm a part of a residence hall society, and one of its core values is recognition as well. And our mascot is a diamond. So funny you mentioned gems. It all connects.
Diamonds are girl's best friend, girlfriend. Yes, they are.
They are. Oh, yes. I love that saying. But I think for me, it started really coming into college, and it was my first week, and I joined what we have is called like a hall council, but it's an organization that plans events for people living in residential life, which I think is really important at NYU too, just because there isn't one of those set campuses. There's no quad that people really gather around, so residence halls become much more used, I think, as like a place of gathering and of activity. So that has really shaped my college experience. But I started as a director of recognition and development, which was then training and development, but it was the same job of recognizing others. And as I kind of went through it, it was interesting to see what an impact recognition had on the work other people were doing. And I think that's something that we take for granted. I think we all want to hear that what we're doing matters to someone else. And I think we've all had those moments where we're super passionate and excited about something and someone else is just not feeling it. And it can kind of crush your spirit a little bit. So I really take pride in being able to recognize others for the work that they're doing. Even if it's something small, just to comment that, hey, that was great. I think people really do value genuine recognition. And a lot of times we don't give it enough to ourselves. So it's really nice to hear it from other people as well.
It's so human. I mean, it makes you, and the connection, the fact that, like you said, you're coming in to this huge city and you need the connection. You need that emotional connection. Otherwise, you're never going to thrive, in the college environment. So